Welcome to the Demi-Sundry podcast, where today I'm recording the first episode and I am sorry for either poor audio quality or hearing cars in the background or hearing my chair while I roll around or any other stupid excessive noises that you may hear while I talk. Now, I do want to get something out of the way right now. I am doing solo podcasting. I would love to be able to interview people. I want to go interview people like the Masons or the Freemasons who are here around. I've seen a couple of them around. Like they have their own, like, I don't know if they're considered churches or things like that, but they have places and I've seen them around and I would want to interview them. But today I'm going to do something a little kind of interesting. It's kind of like only people who are into science are going to care for, but I just saw a lot of things on my Google feed last night and I decided, hey, let's make this into a podcast. So that's why it's titled Well in Science News Today, even though some of it is probably like a week old. But we're going to start here after I take this hit. And before anyone worries too much, I know how my voice sounds. I am of age to be smoking marijuana, and that's why I'm doing it. If I really was in a situation where it's illegal, I probably wouldn't say, hey, I'm going to take a hit real quick, just to clarify so I don't have to deal with this in the future. So the first thing I saw was NASA spots objects speeding around the moon, and this is Yahoo Tech, which I know, but I'm going to check it out. So this was written by Victor Tangerman, and it was done on April 8th, on Monday of the eclipse, and it's about a 2-minute read. And I love how the first heading is just Spider-Man pointing. That's the name of it. It's called Spider-Man pointing. I don't know what it has to do with anything, but I just find that funny. So what I'm going to do is I'm kind of going to read through this, kind of skim it beforehand, and I'm going to read it back, give my commentary, try to make it so I'm not just basically repeating what they're saying and I can actually add some context and something to it. But apparently, NASA's Lunar Renaissance Orbiter spotted what they say is a bizarre sliver of an object speeding above the lunar surface last month. And it says, as it turns out, we're not looking at a UFO or maybe the way they word it is, this is literally the quote. As it turns out, we're not looking at a UFO or maybe an unidentified lunar object. They put or maybe in there, which is funny to me. And they say because there's a perfect human explanation for the lunar apparition. It turns out that the RLO's image was photobombed by the Korean Aerospace Research Institute's Korean Pathfinder Lunar Orbiter KPLO, otherwise known as Denari, which is traveling in nearly parallel orbits, according to the NASA statement. And apparently, despite the similar orbits, it took impeccable timing to catch a glimpse of the spacecraft, an engineering feat in and of itself, apparently. So, people basically saw this picture at NASA, I guess freaked out a little bit, and then they just figured out, the other people who make stuff for space are also putting stuff into space, and it just happens they have a similar orbit, which I think is funny, but Yahoo, you should not be using clickbait titles. I mean, it got me, but still. We're going to jump from one kind of space thing to another kind of space thing. And it's from MIT News, which I trust more than Yahoo. But it says physicist Netta Engelhardt, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name, is searching black holes for universal truths. And she says one question drives her work: which pillars of gravitational physics are just not true? And this was put out yesterday by Jennifer Chu. Now, I do think it's interesting to look at gravity and what it's capable of, because I have a theory myself that you could use the energy from gravitons or whatever the particles that, are gravity, how there's electrons to electricity and photons and stuff like that. I wonder if you can do the same thing and transfer it into energy that we can use. And that's how we would probably do hyperspace travel using black holes. But this lady is searching black holes for universal truths. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I think it can be interesting. So apparently, she thinks when information falls into a black hole, it's not necessarily lost forever, and she is now tackling other questions about gravity, hoping to fill the last largest gaps in physicists' understanding of the universe at the most fundamental scales. If it wasn't obvious, she is a theoretical physicist, which is one of the highest titles you can get in science. You're the person who's coming up with the theories people are testing because you are so well knowledge and research. So this is a smart lady. Apparently, with the research she's finding, she's upending popular ideas in the field of quantum and gravitational physics. And here's apparently the ways that she is. Okay, this is actually kind of interesting. Before she went to MIT, her and some other physicists used gravitational methods to demonstrate that whatever might happen to the information inside of a black hole can, in principle, be undone as the black hole evaporates away, which kind of is like a way of saying the mathematical formula says you should be able to bring back the information once the black hole evaporates, which I think is really cool because it's taking the idea of Hawking radiation. It's like if you were to put a rock inside of a piece of fruit and then the fruit decayed and it didn't take the rock with it, kind of thing, which makes sense to me. That's the best way I can describe it. So apparently it has a paradox with it that has two theories. One of them is that there's a pillar of unity where apparently, like matter and energy, you cannot destroy information. And the other one is a calculation by Hawking from standard gravitational physics showing that information can indeed be destroyed, specifically when radiating out from an evaporating black hole. Okay, so this idea seems kind of interesting. It's kind of almost practice versus math in a way. I don't know how else to describe it, but she says, imagine you had a diary and you set it on fire in a lab. I don't know why it's in a lab, but sure. According to unitarity, if you knew the fundamental dynamics of the universe, you could take the ashes and reverse engineer them to see the diary and its content. Basically saying if you knew the exact makeup of the diary before it was set on fire, like exactly where everything was in it, where everything was, and like how it was placed, how it's connected, and everything, you could technically rebuild it. But apparently, Hawking's calculations show that even if you knew the fundamental dynamics of the universe, you still couldn't reverse engineer the process of a black hole evaporation, because the idea, I guess, is that it is so destructive in a way that it just mathematically it wouldn't be possible that it would be too broken apart. To be fair, I'm not 100% sure. Well, I should have just read the next paragraph because apparently when she was at Princeton, her colleagues showed that, contrary to Hawking's calculation, it is possible to use gravitational physics to see that the process of black hole evaporation does in fact conserve information. So she basically proved Hawking wrong, which is wild, by the way. I don't know why we aren't learning about this woman. Probably because she is in a wheelchair, but you win some, you lose some. So the next part of it basically goes into her life story, and one that shows in 2014, midway through her PhD work, she honed in on one question about quantum gravity and space-time emergence to a specific problem. This is going to sound really sciencey, and it took me a second to wrap my head around it. But it says how to compute the quantum corrections to the entropy. God, I can't say it right. Entropy of gravitating systems. She basically explains there are surfaces in spacetime that are sensitive to gravitational curving called extreme surfaces. She explains that there was a formula that used such surfaces to compute the entropy or whatever of gravitational systems in the abstinence of quantum effects. But in realistic quantum gravity, there are quantum effects, and she wanted to make a formula that took it into account. So most science, when they did the calculation, they didn't take in the effects of quantum gravity, and it was just easier to do calculations like that. She's like, no, I'm doing it right. And she basically worked with it, and she worked with Arnold, does that say Aaron Wall? That's a nice name. Basically, her PhD was saying how they need to take in quantum effects when doing quantum calculations, which honestly seems pretty fair. I don't know why they didn't do it originally. I guess it was just too difficult, or they didn't think about it, or they never added it. But she's right. They should have had that from the beginning. And apparently, in 2019, she realized the equation might give a very different prediction for what a quantum extreme surface might do and what the corresponding quantum gravitation entropy will be in one specific situation as a black hole evaporates. This is where it started. This is where she got her idea. Apparently, they were working around the clock, not really sleeping because they're excited. And I don't blame them. Making a discovery in black holes and how information interacts with black holes, that's kind of dope. And I guess they kept working at it and working at it. Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff. So apparently, black holes can contain information, and you can get that information back by evaporating a black hole, which is pretty interesting. Going to another quantum thing, to another kind of wow, it's going to be a very high level brain today. But this one is dark energy could be evolving over time, raising questions about the nature of the cosmos by Will Sullivan, and it's on Smithsonian Magazine, which I have no connection to. I know nothing about, but he posted this on April 8th, and he's basic. So the subtitle says the largest 3D map of the universe ever made hints that dark energy might not be a constant, though the finding must be backed with more data. So, so quick explanation is dark energy is what causes the universe to expand more rapidly over time, and is considered a constant in a lot of models they use. But apparently, if what they found is true, it would turn all of cosmology upside down, said Dylan Brout, a cosmetologist at Boston University who was not involved in the new research. Okay. So apparently the dude that discovered dark energy 25 years ago, or who led the team, says if it holds up, this is a very big deal. They haven't explained how it's evolving yet, which is my issue. So basically, one of the people said it has deviations, that dark matter may have some deviations. But he's saying I wouldn't call it evidence yet. He says it's too weak. Apparently, it has a 1 in 400 chance of being a statistic anomaly that doesn't prove to be true. The lower than the typical health threshold for a scientific discovery must have a lower than 1 in 1.7 million chance of being a fluke, per the New York Times. So it's basically this team saw this little thing and it could be a fluke, but they're also like, all the other sciences are like, well, if this is actually true, it could flip everything upside down on its head. I think it's probably maybe a fluke. I know 1 in 400 doesn't sound like a lot, but normally it has to be 1 in 1.7 million for it to not be considered a fluke. So, I don't know. It really depends. I want them to do more research, maybe try and, I don't know. You just gotta wait for the model to do what it does, I guess. Feel like Matt Pat on the podcast kind of thing because I'm reading this complicated crap and now I'm trying to condense it down to you guys. Oh my goodness, I'm more like Pot Pat. That's what I am. He's called himself that. Okay, you can look that up. Speaking of that, take it from the mom. Ah shit, we're live. But yeah, back to kind of what I was saying is what I want to do is take discussions, news, things throughout history, ideas, concepts, shows, movies, media, and just simplify it. or put it in a digestible way for people that will get them interested, but also in a way they can understand it where it's not, a bunch of jargon. Kind of like an even geekier translator, weirdly enough. Okay, this was the one I thought would be really cool because of what it could lead to for like, the science fiction. It's why that the picture is what it is, okay? Magnetic levitation. New material offers potential for unlocking gravity-free technology. Now, I know we already have things that can kind of hover. We have things that, that use propellers. We've had things that use electromagnetic fields. But this is from the Okanaka Institution of Science and Technology, which doesn't mean anything to me. But I want to make a flying hoverboard, like an actual hoverboard. That would be cool. It's like, if it is what I think it is, I'm hoping it's a material that just, reacts naturally to the magnetic forces of the Earth and just hovers. That'd be pretty. Oh, that would be weird if they discovered that and it's just hovering there, like, that would be kind of funny, but let me read this over real quick. Okay, they're going over the basics, so I am too. They're saying that the most common type of most common type of levitation occurs through magnetic fields, where objects such as superconductors or dynamic materials, which are materials repelled by a magnetic field, can be made to float above magnets to develop advanced sensors for various scientific and everyday uses. So basically, they're talking about the idea I said before, using a magnetic field and having something levitate like that. So apparently, goodness, I cannot English. Professor Jason Twamley, head of the unit, and his team of OIST researchers and international collaborators had designed a floating platform within a vacuum, which I don't know why scientists always do things within a vacuum. I don't like it. It doesn't test it for real on Earth, because I want to use it on Earth, not in space. But they used graphene and magnets, and remarkably, this levitating platform operates without relying on external sources and can assist in the development of ultra-sensitive sensors for highly precise and efficient measurements. So on my guess, sorry, I had a big cough there. Wow. But my guess is what they mean is for like wind and like earthquakes and movements and stuff like that, like weather kind of. Yeah, they're talking about how they, have different kind of dynamic uh, diamagnetic materials, which basically makes it so they have two different fields so they repulse off each other. So the way it works is graphene is a crystalline form of carbon found in pencils and is strongly repelled by magnets, and it's highly diametric. By chemically coating a powder of microscopic graphene beads with silica and mixing the coated powder and wax, researchers formed a centimeter-sized thin square plate that hovers above magnetic, arranged in a grid pattern. They have a little picture. It's like four magnet cubes, and then right in the middle is this flat disc, and it just sits there. And it basically creates a floating platform that doesn't use anything other than magnetism. Then they go on to talk about some of the issues there that you would have, like things in motion and heat, and how they can minimize the kinetic energy of the oscillating platform and lower this energy for important reasons. And it's a lot of different things that they have to kind of tweak, but they're getting to the way where they can make hovering platforms, which I think would be interesting, honestly. Now, if you are really only here for the science, you might want to leave now, but I got one last thing I saw and I thought might be interesting to throw in. The Minecraft movie. First shots leaked from the film. And at the end, they say it's rumored to be released sometime in 2025. And this was done by Griffin. Now that sounds like a fake name. Well, I'm stupid. He provided a link to his account, and I didn't think to click it. And now I did. And I'm looking at it. It looks pretty good, honestly, but it almost doesn't look like it was made for Minecraft in a way. I mean, it looks good. It looks like realistic. And it looks like if you took a realistic Minecraft tree kind of thing. It's not bad, honestly, but it's only pictures of the trees, nothing else. Well, that was everything for the first podcast. I hope someone enjoyed this, because if someone does, then that gives me a reason to keep making them. So, here's a final hit for the send off.